commercial property management, relocation services, corporate homes, REO, and short sale transactions. You do it all there. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Elite Properties is recognized as a federally certified diversity supplier of real estate services for the Charlotte, North Carolina metropolitan area. And Kathleen Raven has one of the most diverse real estate companies in the Charlotte metropolitan area and has a huge commitment to the community she serves. She's recognized as a national leader in relocation and a consumer-centric innovator. Kathleen's focus is always about ensuring her employees, her agents, her clients, and newcomers to the city feel welcomed and accepted. And she also recently, I'm very honored, she was with Real Living Carolina's Realty and recently transitioned to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I, along with Alan Dalton, who's our CEO of Real Living and Senior Vice President, we're honored to provide Kathleen's company with the Jordan Barris DE&I Award for their exemplary leadership. A lot of great work in the relocation as well as in the diversity space. So thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm so excited you're here with us today.
Thank you.
And then I also have Gretchen Rosenberg, and Gretchen is president and CEO of Kentwood Real Estate, Colorado's exclusive affiliate of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of America. Kentwood is one of the nation's most prestigious luxury real estate brokerages, serving communities throughout the Northern Front Range from metropolitan Denver to Fort Collins, with clientele in all price ranges, which I love, but you also give and deliver that Kentwood luxury touch, which is very, very unique. Gretchen has also been honored with numerous awards, including Housing Wire's National 2020 Vanguard Award, Titan's 100 Colorado Top C-Suite Award, and also been on the Swamppool 200 list. And Gretchen is also very deeply committed to supporting her community and is currently serving on the board of directors of Home Aid Colorado, the Kentwood Cares Foundation, which I know you guys do a lot of great work in the community and recently received a diversity award as well. And also for the Home Services Foundation for Housing Equity, which is one of our very special foundations for making sure that we provide housing opportunities for all. And I love that Gretchen is actually in San Antonio right now at the T360 event, where Gino is as well. So thank you for stepping out to participate in the show, Gretchen. It's really great to have you as well.
Happy to be
So one
here.
of the things that we always ask is, I'm always interested in finding out, did you make real estate by, was it a decision by choice or by chance? Because a lot of times we would love to see more people get into the real estate industry by choice, but a lot of us are by chance. That's how I came into the real estate industry. So I'm going to start with you, Martha. How about you? How'd you get started?
Well, my story is a little bit unique. As you stated earlier, I'm an attorney. And so I call myself a recovering attorney because, to be honest with you, it's much more fun to be in the real estate industry than it is to be in the legal industry. And I graduated law school in 92 and became a member of the California Bar in 1992. And shortly thereafter, I took my broker's exam. So in California, if you have your law license, you can sit for your broker's exam. And I was in the process, my husband and I at the time, were in the process of purchasing a home. And I said, it was a new home. And I said, well, I want the commission. So I took my broker's exam. And that's kind of how I fell by default into real estate. And shortly thereafter, discovered that, life as a trial attorney was really trying on me. I became a single mother and I needed to have a different occupation, I should say. And so I went into representing buyers and sellers. And then I dovetailed that and went in-house used my law degree along with my broker's license and went in-house with Coldwell Banker Residential Brokerage, NRT, got into real estate.
Well, and it's such a, having people don't realize all the things that can go wrong or can go great when in the transaction. And so having general counsel that helps our agents with understanding the contracts and also our consumers out there really protecting them as well is really great that you have that background now that you're also the president of the organization. So Martha, very impressive. How about you, Kathleen? How'd you get started in the industry?
Well, after 8 corporate moves in a very short period of time, we got to Charlotte, and my husband was in corporate real estate, and he said he would buy me breakfast and lunch if I went to real estate school with him. I had 3 little kids. I thought that was going to be like dating. I said, count me in. Where do I sign up? So that's how I got into it.
And Jim is actually one of your partners, and he's an amazing, and he does a lot of work in the commercial space. So we got to give him a shout out,
Yeah.
definitely, because I know he's watching. He's one of your biggest cheerleaders as well. And you've got such great experience in relocation because of those great 8 corporate moves. So you totally can empathize with those families that are moving into the city. How about you, Gretchen? How'd you get in?
Well, like Martha, I was a single mom, and I had actually been instructed by one of my undergraduate professors not to go to law school. He said, every lawyer I know hates their job. So I had gotten an MBA and was working in my ex-husband's advertising agency. And when I got a divorce, I couldn't keep working for the family business. So I went into real estate. I thought, what can I do? I've got a toddler and I want to be able to make a good living. I like architecture. I can amortize a loan. I'm good at marketing and I love people. And so I just kind of figured, well, that's a good way to do it. And I can have some free time. I can be the room mom. I can go on field trips because I don't have to drop him at daycare at 7:30 in the morning and not see him again until 5:30 at night. I had some flexibility. And so I was an agent. I was an agent for 10 or 11 years before I got into management.
And it's such a huge, I know for the agents that you represent, it's such a huge asset to know to walk in their shoes, to understand it. But I also agree with all of you in that having children, that's how I got in the industry. My children were small, and real estate was the perfect, business for us to get into in order to be able to run a really great business, but also protect our families and continue to have them, as part of a big integral part of our lives. So I know each of you has such passion for diversity, and April was Fair Housing Month. We did a lot of promotion in April regarding fair housing and also diversity, but we also think about it every day of the year. It's not just something that we think of in April. So tell me a little bit more about what you can share with us about what you're doing to engage your employees and agents. And again, anybody can answer this question that wants to. Gretchen, how about you? I know that you do so much work in your field as well in this area.
Being a luxury brand and working so much in the luxury space, I feel it's imperative that we communicate to our agents, our staff, and our consumers that luxury to us means treating everyone as vital and special and important, and their definition of luxury may be different. So we work in all price ranges. We don't have a special sign for the $1 million and up properties. Everyone gets the same Kentwood sign and everyone gets the same Kentwood treatment. And so for me, it's been very important to give back to the community on a personal level. As you said, I'm on the board of directors at HomeAid Colorado, and we build housing for situationally homeless. I'm on the board of directors of the Home Services Foundation for Housing Equity. Teresa and I work on that initiative together. But within our company, we had Teresa come in and teach our leadership team the At Home with Diversity course. We've translated our listing books and our buyer books into Spanish. We won an award from the Colorado Association of Realtors at their fair housing event, and we participated in their fair housing event. And we've encouraged our agents to take that NAR Fair Haven simulation. Everyone on our DEI council has gone through the Fair Haven. And then our managing brokers have used that to lead office discussions. So they've encouraged the agents go through the Fair Haven, and then we're going to have a fair housing discussion. And then we've joined all those ancillary associations that you really promote, Teresa. So we've joined the LBTGQ plus Real Estate Alliance and NAREB and NAREP and CAREP and ARIA. And those acronyms essentially cover the African American and Black Association, known as Realtists, the Hispanic and Latino Association, the Asian American Association. And then we push out their educational opportunities to all of our agents and staff. So anytime we hear from those organizations, hey, we've got this class or that session, we'll push that out to the company and say anyone who wants to participate can do so.
And I can tell you, I was just recently in Denver and got a chance to meet with several of your brokers, as well as, your company representatives, because you were at the ARIA's event that they were holding there. I was so impressed with that. And of course, we got to do a real quick shout out to Lori Pace, because Lori Pace is somebody that works very closely with your company and does such great work in the community as well. And so, Martha, how about you? I know you guys do so much work. You've got your Impact Council. I love that they're so involved, and you have such great agents that also do a lot of work in the community.
We do. We're very fortunate because we have a group of agents that have passion in their heart for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we started an Impact Council, a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, Impact, and that stands for Inclusive Mindset Promoting Action to Change Things. And one of the initiatives that we took on last year was a first-time home buyer fair. And like Gretchen, we've also joined all the ancillary groups, and they help co-sponsor with NAREB, and they help co-sponsor the first-time home buyer fair. We believe that we need to kind of move into the marginalized communities and show them how easy it is. Not always easy, but show them the path to home ownership. And we have credit repair experts, we have title and escrow and mortgage, all there representing and showing and demonstrating what it takes to be a homeowner. And so we are doing that as well this year in San Diego, as you know, and you stated earlier, Teresa, we are quite close to the border in Mexico. We span all the way down to Chula Vista. And so we are going to take our first time home owner fair down there this year, and we are working on that with our Impact Council. And as far as training on fair housing, we really take the bull by the horns on this, and we do a mandatory training for all of our agents annually. We believe it is extremely important for our agents to be well versed on what the protected classes are. California has more protected classes than any other state in the United States, and we make certain that they are duly trained. We track this, and we give them many opportunities to be trained on fair housing. And fortunately, in California, we actually have a fair housing disclosure that is part of every transaction, whether it's a for sale or for a lease. So that has really launched California agents into having knowledge into everything that has to do with bias. And it's a wonderful, wonderful form that everyone fills out. So we use that also as a training mechanism for not only our agents, but for the consumers as well. They are required to sign that as well.
I think that's awesome, because sometimes consumers don't realize that they can't ask our agents certain questions, because, they also need to know, we want to protect all of you, and we want to provide everyone with the same opportunities for homes. So asking questions like, oh, I'm Latina, where should I live? That's not something that is allowed by under Fair Housing, under the Fair Housing Act. So we want to protect everyone. So it's great that you are doing that. And I love it. And I know, Kathleen, you are a huge champion for women, being that you're a women-owned business, being that you also do a lot of relocation in the industry. And in your perspective, I just kind of want to touch on that as well, because I know, you taught me a lot about WEBE, about the organization here in Atlanta. You're constantly talking about how important it is for women to get their certification, diversity certification. That's really important and critical. Tell me why.
Well, in today's world, diversity is it's hard for people to fill those requirements. And as a federally certified diversity supplier of real estate for the Charlotte market, we encourage our agents to join boards, to volunteer. Like you said, we're a member of the Greater Women's Business Council, NABO. We're a WOSB, a WBENC business enterprise, so Women that have the ability to join these organizations really need to take a look at it. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of investigation. There's a lot of fraud involved. But once you do, it's a network of women that can really take you to the next level. So I am very involved in the Greater Women's Business Council and work with them. I know Teresa Roz Lewis is down in Atlanta there.
Love her.
But it really opens a lot of doors, and a lot of companies right now need to fill those requirements.
And one of the things that we as an organization at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services are always looking for, because relocation companies and third-party companies that represent the corporations that do those moves, right, Kathleen? They're always wanting to work with companies that are women-owned, that are small businesses, that are diversity, that are in hub zones. So for more information, reach out to me. I'll give you a lot of details on how you can be certified if you're not currently so that you can get that experience as well. And I know, Kathleen, that has really helped. And I love that you are one of our franchises that's women-owned that operates in a Southern market. All right, so let's talk about a little bit more about leadership, which I think is really important. And, one of the things that people want to know is, how did you get there, right? Because they see you in CEO and president and, Swan Pool and head relocation. How is it that you got there? Because a lot of times that path can be good and it can be bad. It can be, difficult. So any challenges that each of you want to share with that can help others get inspired, I'd love to hear from you. How about you, Martha? Let's start with you first.
Sure. Well, I believe that while the path has been nicely laid out for the up and coming generations of women, I'm still seeing women, bump up against that glass ceiling. And it certainly is something that we need to be mindful of and pay attention to. So young women that come to me and ask me these questions, how did you get into leadership? How did you become the president? What I tell them is, you're going to be bumping up against challenges, and that is what makes us who we are. And that you need to take the leap and take the chances and be bold. Because I think for so many of us that grew up in a different generation where being bold was being too spirited, maybe, or too loud. I think that I try to guide new up and coming leaders in that way, that, we still have to bump up against that, but we also need to reach back and really be grateful for not our forefathers, our foremothers that blazed a path for us. So we didn't have to march in the streets for just the basic rights that human beings have. So I really try to steer them towards gratitude and say, we really need to look back on that. But there are challenges still that we need to tackle as women, as we all know. But that's the bad part. The good part is that, boy, the sky is the limit for women now. And it's so exciting. I have two young daughters, millennial age daughters, and I constantly remind them about the opportunities that are in front of them. And one last thing, I'll comment on that. What I find just so rewarding as a woman, as a professional woman, is that women really are standing up for and with other women now. It wasn't like that in the past. I think everyone on this panel can probably give us stories about the challenges that women created for other women. I think women today are embracing bringing women up. And that's what I think is probably the most exciting thing about women in leadership today.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's definitely a changing opportunities, especially for our daughters, for our children, right? How about you, Kathleen?
Well, first of all, I think you have to have a passion for what you do, whether it's selling widgets, selling real estate. You just have to have a passion for it. And if you have a passion for it, you're going to be successful. The other thing you've got to do too is you've got to you've got to juggle a lot of balls in the air. You got to keep them in the air and they're gonna fall. And, the best thing I can say about women is that we have those balls we're always juggling. Those commercials of the past where we could do everything and make it look effortless are, sort of obsolete. But when the balls fall, they are going to fall, and you just need to pick it up and move on, because tomorrow's going to be another day and it's going to be better. And we all learn from our mistakes. And, we just have so much opportunity in front of us now. We just need to move forward and not dwell on anything negative of the past.
Well, and I love that you are extremely passionate. I mean, Kathleen, the minute that I met you, I was like, oh my God, you exude it, right? It's such a great thing, especially for the first time we met back at HSF Affiliates in that conference room. I remember thinking, what a phenomenal lady. So I'm excited that you have that. And it's so true because you just had to switch. You just made a huge switch from Real Living Real Estate to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And that was a big, talk about juggling those balls and getting transition over. And you've done such a great job at that. How about you, Gretchen? What can you tell us about leadership?
Something Kathleen just said just reminded me of that old commercial we probably remember for Anjali perfume. And this beautiful woman dressed up in a pencil skirt and a blouse sings, I can bring home the bacon.
Yeah,
and
for some reason, I thought that was Fresca,
He says, I can bring home the bacon, I can fry it up in a pan, and I can never let him forget he's a man. And I remember as a kid thinking, that's complete bullshit. Sorry. I forgot we're on TV. It's just, you can keep a lot of balls in the air. Women are good at that, but we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to. But in terms of whether you want to be in leadership, one of my first questions for women and younger men who come to me and say, how do you do it? Or what do I do? I say, question your motives. Why do you want to be in leadership? Because if it's because you're tired of being a commission salesperson and you think it's easier to make a salary and get benefits, I got to tell you, that is not the case. It's not easier. It's challenging in a whole different set of ways. And so first of all, question your motivation. Second of all, be patient. I set out that intention that I wanted to be a managing broker of one of our offices probably 5 or 6 years before it actually happened. I used to go to spin class and picture, what would my sales meetings look like? I would think, how am I going to run a meeting? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And I did that for years. So put the attention out, know what your motives are, and then network and meet people, and it will happen for you.
So true. What great advice. One of the things that we always talk about, and, I think that we all, believe it or not, have superpowers. I'm just like, I am a huge, fan of, Wonder Woman and, all of the different things. And each one of us does have something that we bring to the table that's very unique. And I think that's something that, whether you're all around, it's really important to be rounded, well-rounded all around is what I'm trying to say, right? But it's also really important to acknowledge what your strength is, because that can be your superpower. So what would you consider your superpower? Kathleen, I'm going to start with you.
I'm a multitasker. That is for sure. And I surround myself with positive people. And I'm not, I don't micromanage. I'm more of a delegator. But being a multitasker and surrounding yourself with people that are extremely positive makes your life so much easier and makes you look really good.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Martha?
I would absolutely agree with Kathleen. Surrounding yourself with positive people. And if you're not, you need to, what they say, take out the garbage, because that really does weight you down. I try to remain very positive. I would say my superpower would be, aside from this amazing team that I have around me, they are my rocket fuel. But I would say for me personally, it would be the ability to be compassionate in a really difficult situation, because I think so often leaders are expected to be these fearless, amazing, strong individuals. But if you can show your vulnerability and show compassion, it really makes you even stronger, in my opinion. And as women, we're allowed to do that. And I do know that I always reflect back on one of my very favorite poets, Angelina. I'm sorry. Um, Maya
Angela
Angelou. Maya Angelou. And one thing that she says that I absolutely love is I've learned that whenever I decide something with an open heart, I usually make the right decision. And I have learned it leading, you deal with so many people, so employees and agents, so many different personalities, and you cannot be hurt by people that are negative. You can quickly escort them out of your life, but you have to remember one thing: hurt people hurt people. So if you can be compassionate with those people, you don't always have to throw them out of your life. Figure out why they're acting the way they are acting. And if you can drill down to that and be compassionate, you might win them over as a friend.
Oh, so true, right? I love that, Martha. That's a great quality to have. How about you, Gretchen?
Superpower. I think probably I'm very resilient and I'm able to compartmentalize. So I can just keep chugging forward and weather a storm. And I've weathered some. And I feel like resilience is very important in life and in business, but also approaching life with a sense of optimism. I definitely feel like if you're a glass half full kind of person, you can be resilient and you can weather the storm because better days are coming. And so I guess that would be my superpower
And I have to tell you, another one that you may not be aware of is that you give great advice and you really think about, the role that, hey, don't always undersell yourself. You have great strengths. I've heard that about you, Gretchen. So I wanted you to know that that's another one that I know that you have that you may not recognize. One of the things that I always look for is mentorship. I absolutely think it's important that we mentor others. I was mentored. I think it helped. I wasn't mentored one-on-one, but I had mentors. And, I did have one mentor that she retired several years, Barb Adam, and I want to give her a shout out. I absolutely love this woman. She was a relocation genius in my industry. And Barbie and I always call her Barbie. She actually was, anytime I had anything, I would go to her and she would give me that advice. And of course, we have others as well. So tell me about, how do you feel about mentorship? I'm actually going to be speaking on this subject next with Freddie Mac on the 17th. Hopefully y'all will all join me for that conversation. But, how do you feel about mentors, mentorship? Have you mentored and who was your mentor? And Gretchen, I'll start with you.
I've had so many. I could give many, many vital people a shout out, men and women. But I will single out my mother, since it's almost Mother's Day, and say she was my very first mentor. She probably doesn't even know this, but she was an entrepreneur. She was not able to get a job in her chosen field, which was research science, because the men interviewing her said, well, what does your husband think about this? What does your husband think about you working with 3 children at home? And so she went off and started her own business, a children's bookstore that was known throughout Southern California. And when I was in high school, I wanted to be a cheerleader because they were the cool girls. And my mother said, don't be a cheerleader. Don't go try out for cheerleading. Girls don't stand on the sidelines cheering for boys. Girls get in the game. So that was some really very pivotal advice that still sits with me. And the other thing is that my mother and my kindergarten teacher had a conversation about me, which goes back to something Martha said earlier. When I was little, and the kindergarten teacher said, she can be a little bossy, but we kind of look at it like leadership skills. And my mother said, yes, absolutely. She has leadership skills. So my mother was a terrific, and still is a terrific mentor. So happy Mother's Day.
That is so wonderful. I love that, Gretchen. I know. Thank you for recognizing her, and also that it is Mother's Day. It's such a special day on Sunday. How about you, Kathleen?
Wow. Great answer. But I too, well, first of all, mentorship is very, very important. None of us got here by being average, and we all had great mentors. So many, I probably could go on and on. But I have to say that the ones that really come to mind are, first of all, my husband, who's always been the wind beneath my wings. I mean, he knows my
He is.
strengths, my weaknesses, and my goodness, his background really elevated me to, exceed my expectations. Then I'd have to say my mother, of course, because she always believed in volunteerism, and she saw the good in everyone. I mean, this is a woman who will give you the shirt off her back still. So you can't say, oh, I really like your earrings, or I like your shirt. You just might have them. My grandmother, my grandmother was the first businesswoman of Buffalo, New York. Now, talk about a tough act to follow, but she made me feel important. She always had time for me, and I always felt like I was her favorite. But if you talk to any of my sisters, they all think that they were her favorite too. So, that. Ann Little Anderson, she was my first broker. Oh my gosh, that woman is amazing. She became a really good friend. I remember interviewing with her, and back then there were a few companies only, and she took my page of questions and put them in the trash. She said, honey, if you haven't gotten these answered by now, you just need to go with your gut. Don't look back, and you're going to be great at this. So I really appreciate all her wisdom in the real estate business. And then I look at my family, who just always say, we can do this. And that is because we're loved. And I think that's a very important part to take away, is who your support network is. And when your family, instead of talks of mom can do this or dad can do this, they always go, we can do that. That makes me really proud.
Oh, I love that. That's great, Kathleen. Martha, we'll round it off with you.
Well, mentorship is so incredibly important to me. I heard a quote not long ago that said, once you arrive at a certain place in your career, it's time for you to take the elevator back down and bring some other people up. And I love that visual. And so I've been working with some young women that are very interested in leadership roles. And I think that is our duty and obligation to other women to bring them up. Just like Gretchen said, I have so many mentors. I could name so many men and women, but probably like both Gretchen and Kathleen, the women in my family really stand out to me. My mother was a philanthropist and never worked outside of the home. She raised 5 children and passed away quite young. So I know that she would have been a CEO of a company had she lived past 45 years old, but she was a remarkable woman in any organization that she was a part of. She somehow found her way to leadership and would bring me to all these organizational events and hold her hand out, and I would walk over and hold her hand. I remember looking up at her and thinking, wow, she can command this audience. I'd love to do that someday. So my mother was instrumental in my confidence and my desire to want to be like her. I also had a very free-spirited grandmother who was the editor of the San Juan, Puerto Rico Times, believe it or not, in an era when women were not editors of newspapers. And then I have an aunt that is a remarkable woman, never had children of her own, but she had a PhD in nutrition and a diet. She was a dietitian, and she worked for the military, focusing on mental health and fitness for Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, and had a huge role working with Schwarzkopf during Desert Storm. And
Wow.
yeah, these women really set the bar high for me and loved me all along the way and showed me that women can get into these places of leadership.
Well, I think, each of you have just expressed something about someone that was in your family member that kind of was a role model that actually was very involved in community, very involved in leadership, regardless, right, during the time of where they were in their lives. And I think that is really very telling about how we can change the landscape and help more women get into careers and also into leadership roles, if that's the passion that they have, because not everyone is passionate about doing that. So one question I always get is, Teresa, were there any biases that you experienced or anything that you remember, happening to you that made you want to pivot or take a step back, anything that you would want to share with others so that they realize it's not easy. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, I had a lot of challenges as as I was trying to become the leader that I wanted to be. How about you, Gretchen? Were you in a situation where you can kind of express that or tell us any kind of challenge?
I guess I'm fortunate I didn't face a lot of bias, but I can say that I have faced some, and I guess everyone has faced some, and some of you out there have faced a lot. There's a youth bias when you get started in business, and I definitely noticed that. And I would go back to just be patient and prove yourself, and you'll get there. Of course, there's a gender bias, and I've been fortunate to work with men who really didn't see that and didn't make me feel that they had a gender bias. But then I've come into contact even more recently, as after becoming a CEO, where I have noticed more gender bias. That wasn't an early on thing, that was a later thing. And then of course there's other biases that you face. And I think how you approach it, how you maybe gently re-educate people, or decide it doesn't matter. They don't matter. I know what I'm doing. I know what my path is, and I'm going to just continue forward because I feel good about my decision. And that's one way to try to overcome bias. And then there's someone like Lori Pace, who you mentioned at the beginning, who's out there really becoming a very strong voice for diversity culturally, societally, and in business. And so we all have choices how bias hits us, and then also how we react to it.
And how we educate others about it so that they can learn from it. I love that, Gretchen. That's great. And so true. And now a lot of people also experience senior bias. I mean, I've seen that. People tell, Alan Dalton says that all the time, like, oh, it's like, I get senior bias all the time. And all of you will all know Alan Dalton. How about you, Martha?
I like Gretchen, I didn't experience a lot of bias, but there were some insidious moments of bias as a young lawyer. If you can imagine, walking into a courtroom and having a judge pull me aside and say, "Young lady, you'll never wear pants in my courtroom again." And just interesting things like that. I grew up in my career in the time when men were allowed to say what they wanted to say and there were no consequences. So that you kind of bob and weave through that. But when it comes to the bias, what I chose to do with it was use it as jet fuel. So there were so many times when I had someone say, "Well, you're blonde and you're a single mom and you're, how could you run this legal department?" Or how, so many different biases. Blonde is kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but you hear all the
but
blonde
it's
jokes.
true.
It is true. It is true. People suffer through so much more significant bias. So I don't want to minimize that, but I just used it as jet fuel. I always have. One of my mentors taught me to do that very early on, rather than become angry about it. It's kind of like, okay, you don't think I can do it? Just watch me. So I used all those little elements of bias that kind of creep in. I just quickly turn those around and use them as motivation to prove them wrong.
It creates a fuel for you, right? Of rocket
It does.
fuel, just because it makes you realize, okay, I'm going to prove you. I'm going to just do it so that I can
Yes.
say I did it, right?
Right.
So I think that is so true. How about you, Kathleen?
I'm an open book. I probably am way too open, but I always looked at people who were judging you before you even got there and thought, they don't know you. It's their insecurity that's making that assumption. So I've always killed them with kindness. I mean, that's, I want them, I want everyone to be my friend, obviously. And I want everybody to have compassion, and, we can't train these things into people, but we can certainly understand that, somebody could have had a really bad day and they're just taking it out on you because you're the one there. So I just overlook those things and just move forward. But I always say, be kind. That's the number one thing I tell my agents and my children, and just be kind, because you don't know where they're going to or what they've come from.
And that is the best advice. I mean, be kind, because a lot of times we see that kindness is not always there, right? And I can tell you, when I was in Brazil, because I was just recently there and I ended up staying longer, and my language skills are not the strongest when it comes to speaking Portuguese. It's very similar to Spanish, but it's not exactly the same. And just the kindness of the Brazilian people is what I left with, is how kind people were to try to help me, even though they realized that, okay, I'm trying to speak English. How about Spanish? Let's do a combo. So this is what I'm looking for. And they would really be very helpful. And it just changed my perspective, right? Being kind and always thinking that way. So I think that's a great answer, Kathleen. Can you believe it? We're almost done. We're wrapping up the show. We're almost out of time. But one of the things that I always like to know is what advice, and again, Martha, you mentioned something about how things are so different, and I think you are, with Mother's Day, reflecting back, and the mothers of our mothers and our mothers, but beyond that, and how far we have come along, because it was not done. We have it so easy. A lot of us do today. My children do, my kids do, but it wasn't always easy for my mother and for others as well, who had to fight for rights, who had to go, and even the right for us to vote, the right for us to have title on the homes that we own, all these little things that women in the background had to fight for us to be who we are today. So tell me, what advice would you give someone, your daughter, your family member, about business or about, life? And Gretchen, I'll start with you.
What advice about business? I think that life has become very complicated, and I have a 27-year-old son, and I see him and his girlfriend and his cohort, their friends, and I just know there's so much being thrown at them so quickly every day. And I think one of my key pieces of advice would be just stay true to yourself and get to know who you are, and don't judge yourself based on what society says you should be or what the latest Instagram, TikTok fad looks like. I guess that's one thing I would say. And the other is be prepared to work hard. Life isn't easy. Success doesn't come, it's not handed to you. And it'll take some hard work and determination.
Oh, and one of the things, you're so right, because you look at these Instagram overnighters and they're become famous, and people they think that's how it happens in every industry. And it doesn't. It's hard work. It's, making sure that you're constantly doing 100% to get there. So Gretchen, thank you so much. That's great. How about you, Kathleen?
Well, first of all, I would say have a passion for what you do. I don't care whatever field you go into, do something you love. I think a lot of people go into things for money right now, and they burn out really, really quickly. And so what I would tell people is do something you love, something you have a passion for, and the economic rewards will come. I will also tell them to buy real estate, because it is the easiest way and the most productive way to grow wealth in America.
Oh, what great advice, for sure. Martha?
I think I would mirror these two fine panelists, all three of you. Compassion and passion is so incredibly important. You need to find your passion and what you are most interested in. Find that fire in your belly, and don't follow the monetary reward. It will come to you. But probably most importantly, for the professional advice that I give, is don't throw yourself into it to the point where you ignore what's most important in your life, and that is your family and your close dear friends. I have learned something from one of the speakers at our Berkshire convention years ago, and that was, you're not going to be in the picture if you're standing in the frame. And that really resonated with me because I tend to be a workaholic, like probably most of us, all four of us tend to migrate towards working long hours. And so just to pause and make certain that you are really spending time with those that you love the most. And really don't lose sight of that, because at the end of the day, when you close your eyes for the last time, you're not going to be concerned about what it is you're taking with you. It's the relationships that you have made through the years, whether it's your peers at work or family, whatever it may be. Really focus on those, because those need to be cultivated the most.
Oh, that's such wise wisdom. I love it. All right. As we end the day, I always ask, tell me a little bit. Well, first of all, real quick, just 30 seconds each. What's your favorite book? Because I think those are great takeaways for anybody. So a book that you recommend. So Gretchen, how about you?
I am constantly reading, so I have a favorite book of the moment, but there's so many amazing, amazing books. I love Patrick Lencioni as a business writer. And right now I'm reading a book called Power Branding by Steve McKee, and that's fascinating as well.
Oh, wow. What is that about? Is it like about how do you brand yourself?
Yeah, he studied the top brands and then kind of dove down into the leadership of those brands and how they kind of
Impact
catalyzed their companies into success by powerfully branding.
I'm going to read that book. I was thinking branding this morning is an area that I want to learn more about. Love that. Thank you so much. That's one I've not heard of. How about you, Kathleen?
Well, first of all, I have been reading a lot of articles recently on cryptocurrency. I want to understand this new phenomenon. I've been reading about Bitcoin, the study of money from when it started with rocks and shells, and it's so interesting. And I feel, knowledge is power. It's what sets you apart. So whether you're involved in it or not, you still need to have a knowledge of a lot of things, and I just find it fascinating, all the information I'm gathering from these books these days.
Oh, fantastic. And that is so true. The metaverse, everything that has to do with NFTs, which by the way, Women Who Lead, we're going to do an NFT that we're going to be able to offer and then also give it toward the foundation, Gretchen. I'm really excited about that. So that's something else I'm learning too, a lot about, because it is really important and I don't want to get left behind. And then Martha, how about you?
One of my current favorite authors is Peter Bregeman, and he writes many books on leadership, but Emotional Intelligence is one that I just finished. And then I'm now working on Leading with Emotional Courage. And he's remarkable. And it talks about the brain and why people respond the way they respond, and how you have to have a balance between the intellectual thinking brain and the emotional brain, and how your childhood memories come into play when you respond to certain things. It's fascinating. Peter Bregeman.
Oh, that's great. Again, another one that I'm not familiar with. So again, thank you all for joining me today. We're going to end our series with your favorite quote. It always is a way to kind of I like to send this in a positive mode, as we all talked about being positive and having passion. So tell me, what's your favorite quote? Kathleen, I'll start with you.
Well, mine is really simply, no is just an obstacle until you can figure out how to get around it.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that quote. That's the first one I've heard on the show. How about you, Martha?
I'm going to go back to Maya Angelou, my very favorite poet. And when you think about what she must have gone through as a Black woman pre-civil rights, to come up with this quote, it's remarkable. And that is, you may not always be in control of the bad things that happen to you, but you can choose to not be reduced by them. Oh,
great quote. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love Maya Angelou. I think she's great. And I just saw on YouTube when I was in Brazil, a show she did with Oprah, her last one. And it was so special because even then she said, I'm always learning. Like, have you arrived? She says, no, I'm still not there. I learn every day. And she was like 80 years old at the time that she was talking. Yeah. So it's amazing. How about you, Gretchen?
Well, I love Coco perfume. Coco by Chanel. So I chose a Coco Chanel quote. And that is, a girl should be two things: who and what she wants.
Oh,
Mm.
who and what she wants. And Coco Chanel's my favorite too. I love Coco. And I love her story. A lot of people don't realize her adversity of growing up. And it's a beautiful story. Gretchen, thank you for that quote. Thank all of you for being on the show today. I really loved it. I got so many insights from all of you. And I really do appreciate learning more about your backgrounds and the work that you do and how you came to the roles that you have today. I found this great quote that I thought was also perfect, describing who you are. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. I think that was just, so encompassing of what each of you talked about today. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. And you can actually catch our newest podcast. I've got a podcast and it's featuring Latina Power on Women Who Lead Serious podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, all of the different resources that are available out there for podcasts. And also our next show is going to be on June the 1st, 2022, and it'll be featuring the motivators. You're not going to want to miss it. So as we say goodbye, I want to make sure that you all remember Mother's Day is on Sunday. We want to celebrate all the mothers out there. I want to celebrate my mothers. My birth mother was Bernardita Caban, who actually died in 2004. I actually was separated from her at age 3 and did not get to see her again until my 30s. But she was a wonderful, wonderful mother and a wonderful influencer in my life in later years. And my mother, Mercedes, who actually raised me. She actually relocated to this country, not knowing the language, writing a letter to my dad. They met through mail, and that's how they met, and getting married to, and immediately having 2 daughters that she took under her wing. And she made us feel like her children every single day. And she was an entrepreneur. She was just an amazing, amazing woman. But she came to this country not knowing the language, not knowing anyone at all, and died at age 38. So Martha, like your mother, she died very young. But she was such an incredible, incredible inspiration to me. So thank you all. I really absolutely love the wisdom that you brought. This show is very special. And all of you, remember, as you come up the ladder with you, remember to bring other women up the top too. So thanks again. Wishing you all a great and wonderful Mother's Day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy
Happy
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.